She was only supposed to deliver a report, but the CEO locked the door behind her. "Marry me," he said, his voice calm yet absolute. Her pulse pounded. "You're joking." His gaze didn't waver. "Decline and you're fired. A contract. No love, no escape." Yet when she signed, his fingers brushed hers. Slow, deliberate. His eyes darkened, not with victory, but something far more dangerous. She thought she was just a pawn, but what if she was the prize? A love story built on conditions, hidden emotions, and an undeniable pull. Liam Blackwood was a man who controlled everything. His business, his employees, his future. Cold, ruthless, and untouchable. In his world, love was a distraction, a weakness he refused to entertain. But power came with sacrifices, and today he was about to make the biggest one yet. Sophia Carter never expected her life to change in a single moment. She had worked tirelessly as an assistant, navigating Liam's impossible demands and icy stares. She had seen glimpses of the man beneath, the rare flicker of something human in his steel-gray eyes. But she never imagined she'd be forced to marry him. It started with a contract, a simple deal, a marriage built on terms, not love. But could two people pretend for long when their hearts were betraying them with every stolen glance? Liam needed her for a business merger, an ironclad image of stability. To him, emotions didn't belong in contracts. And Sophia? She needed this job more than anything. With her mother's medical bills piling up and no other options, walking away wasn't a choice. What neither of them expected was how impossibly close they would become. Sophia thought she hated Liam. His arrogance, his coldness, his unshakable control over everything around him. But something changed when she saw him late at night, alone in his office, staring out the window as if searching for something he couldn't name. And Liam? He told himself she was just a means to an end. But then why did her presence feel like the only thing keeping him grounded? Why did he catch himself watching her, wondering what it would feel like if she looked at him with something other than obligation? The lines were blurring. The rules were breaking. And soon, they would have to face the one thing they never planned for, the truth. Would love break through the walls Liam had built, or would they both become prisoners of their own fears? 5 years ago, Liam Blackwood was a different man. Still cold, still calculating. But there was something else. A hesitation, a war beneath the surface, a man on the edge of wanting something he knew he couldn't have. And Sophia Carter? She was everything he wasn't. Warm, expressive, filled with life in a way that unsettled him. She had walked into his world like a storm, uninvited, unexpected, impossible to ignore. Their first meeting wasn't supposed to matter. It was a charity gala, a night of empty conversations and practiced smiles. Sophia had been there for work, assigned to manage event coordination, too busy making sure everything ran smoothly to care about the cold, brooding billionaire in the corner. But he had noticed her. The way she smoothed down her dress after every interaction, as if reminding herself to stay composed. The way her fingers tightened around her clipboard when an investor belittled her. The way she bit her lip to keep from snapping back, pride burning in her eyes. And then, when she thought no one was looking, the way she slipped outside into the garden, breathing in the quiet like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. That was when Liam followed. "You don't seem like the type to disappear," he had said, standing beneath the glow of a lantern, his presence too commanding to ignore. "And you don't seem like the type to care," she'd replied, arms crossing as if to guard herself. He should have walked away. But instead, he had stepped closer, close enough to catch the faint scent of jasmine in her hair, close enough to see the fire in her eyes, fire that dared him to step beyond the walls he had built around himself. For a moment, it had felt like something shifted, like if he had reached for her hand, she might have let him. Like if he had said something real, something honest, she might have believed him. But Liam Blackwood didn't believe in things like fate, and so he did what he was best at. He walked away. The moment, everything changed. Months passed. They saw each other again. Brief moments, stolen glances, unsaid words. She was just an assistant back then, working under his company in a different department. Their interactions were professional, controlled. But then one night, everything changed. It was late, the office nearly empty. A storm raged outside, rain pelting against the glass. Liam had been working late when he heard a crash from the hallway. Sophia. She'd been reaching for a file on the top shelf when she lost her balance, the stack of documents tumbling around her. He had caught her just before she hit the floor. For a second, they just stood there, his hands gripping her waist, her breath uneven against his chest. It was nothing. It should have been nothing. But Liam found himself hesitating before letting go. And Sophia, for the first time, saw something behind his usual mask. Not control, not arrogance, but something else. Something like fear. Not of her, but of whatever it was he was feeling. She never asked him about it. And 2 weeks later, he was gone. Transferred overseas. No explanation. No goodbye. Just a letter on her desk, signed with his name but devoid of any emotion. She told herself it didn't matter, that she never wanted to see him again. But 5 years later, standing in his office, hearing him say the words, "Marry me," she realized something terrifying. No matter how much time had passed, no matter how much she wanted to hate him, Liam Blackwood had never really left her at all. The moment Sophia signed her name on the contract, she sealed her fate. She had told herself it was just business. A cold, calculated transaction, just like Liam wanted. But as she stood in his penthouse that night, wearing the engagement ring he had slipped onto her finger without hesitation, reality sank in. She was engaged to Liam Blackwood, not out of love, not out of choice, but because he needed her. Because this deal, this sham of a marriage, was the only way to secure a billion-dollar merger, the only way to appease the board and keep his company from slipping into the hands of men he didn't trust. That was the truth she knew. But there was another truth, one she didn't dare admit, that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the only one who needed this. She should have been stronger than this. It was just a contract. She had read every line, memorized every clause. 6 months, no expectations, no real marriage. Yet as she lay awake that night, staring at the city lights outside the window, her mind refused to quiet. She wasn't naive. She knew what kind of man Liam had become, colder, more ruthless than ever. But she also knew the man he used to be. The one who had held her under cherry blossoms, whispering things he never meant to say. The one who had almost kissed her in the office that night, but walked away instead. The one who had disappeared, leaving only a letter that said nothing and everything all at once. Her heart was a fool for still remembering, for still aching. She turned over in bed, the diamond ring catching the light. This wasn't real. It would never be real. So why did it feel like she was losing something? Again? Liam knew what people said about him. He was ruthless. A man who turned emotions into liabilities, people into transactions. That was fine. It was how he survived. But tonight, as he stood in his office, watching the city from behind glass, he felt something foreign clawing at his chest. Regret. Sophia was here, in his home, wearing his ring. And yet, she had never felt so far away. Because she wasn't his. Not really. Because she still looked at him with that quiet, cautious strength. The same strength she had the night he first met her, when she'd refused to let him see her break. He had thought time would erase her from him, that burying himself in work, in power, in control, would make her memory fade. But 5 years had passed, and when he saw her again in that boardroom, it took him less than 5. The night was silent, but inside Liam's chest, a storm raged. Sophia stood by the door, her suitcase beside her. The 6-month contract was over. No more business arrangement, no more pretending. She was leaving, and Liam couldn't stop her. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how. He had spent years building walls around himself, shielding his heart behind cold logic and ruthless ambition. Yet somehow, without permission, Sophia had slipped through the cracks, and now she was walking away. Her fingers tightened around the suitcase handle. "It's done, Liam. We did what we had to. The deal went through. You got everything you wanted." Her voice was steady, but her eyes, God, her eyes were filled with something he couldn't bear to see. Pain. His jaw clenched. "Is that what you think?" She let out a hollow laugh. What else is there to think? You needed a wife for the contract. I was convenient. We played our parts, and now it's over. Liam's pulse pounded. This wasn't how it was supposed to end, but maybe it was. Maybe this was what he deserved. She reached for the door. Wait. His voice was low, rough. She froze. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, she turned back. And that's when he saw it, the hope she was trying so hard to kill. The silent question in her eyes. Tell me to stay. Tell me it wasn't just business. Tell me I wasn't the only one who felt it. His throat tightened. His whole life, Liam had been taught that love was a weakness, an illusion that shattered the moment reality set in. He'd convinced himself he was incapable of it. But Sophia had never been an illusion. She had been the only real thing in his life. And if he let her go now, he knew. He would never find his way back. She stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. Tell me you never loved me, Liam. Say it and I'll walk away forever. His fingers curled into fists. She was giving him an out, a final chance to bury everything, to turn away before it was too late. But for once in his life, Liam Blackwood didn't want an out. He wanted her. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. I can't. Sophia's breath hitched. His gaze locked onto hers, raw and unguarded. I can't say it because it's not true. The suitcase hit the floor. In the next heartbeat, she was in his arms, his lips crashing against hers in a kiss that burned away every lie, every hesitation. And for the first time in years, Liam wasn't running. He was exactly where he was meant to be. Sophia wasn't sure how long she stood there, wrapped in Liam's arms, her heart racing in sync with his. The weight of everything, the contract, the past, the pain, still lingered, but in this moment, nothing mattered except the warmth of his touch. Still, a part of her hesitated. Then what happens now? She whispered against his chest, afraid to believe, afraid to hope. Liam exhaled, his grip on her tightening as if he feared she would slip away again. We figure it out, he said, voice rough but certain. Together. She pulled back just enough to look up at him. And if it doesn't work? He cupped her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. Then we keep trying. It should have been simple. A confession, a promise, an unspoken agreement that love would be enough. But Sophia had spent 6 months guarding herself against him, convincing herself that he would never see her as anything more than a business arrangement. And now he was standing here, looking at her as if she was the only thing that mattered. But was it enough? She took a shaky breath. Liam, we're not just fighting against our own feelings. This world, your world, won't accept me. Your board, your family. They'll never stop reminding you that I don't belong. His jaw clenched. I don't care what they think. You say that now, she said softly. But when the pressure comes, when they push you to choose, there is no choice, he cut in. There was never a choice, Sophia. It's you. It's always been you. The certainty in his voice stole her breath. She had spent so long thinking she was the only one who had fallen, that she had been foolish to believe in something that was never real. But now, staring into his stormy eyes, she saw the truth. Liam had been falling just as hard. He had just been too afraid to admit it. A soft laugh escaped her lips, part relief, part disbelief. You really are impossible, you know that? A smirk tugged at his lips. So, I've been told. She let out a breath, finally allowing herself to lean into him. Okay, she whispered. We figure it out. Together. A slow, relieved exhale left him. Together. Outside, the city stretched before them, distant lights flickering like stars. The hum of traffic a quiet reminder that life continued beyond this moment. But in Liam's arms, Sophia finally felt like she had found home. No contracts, no conditions, just them. And for the first time, that was enough. Love isn't always about grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it's about choosing each other, despite the odds, despite the past. But what happens when fear holds you back? When pride stands in the way? Is love truly enough to rewrite a broken story or do some wounds never heal? Their story wasn't about fate. It was about the choices they made. And now, the question remains. If love gave you one last chance, would you take it?